Good morning, everybody. I want to go through very quickly an overview, really, of what the university's been doing over the last year or so. I've been myself here at the University of Oxford since July, so I've not been involved in all of this work, but I've taken over from the director, Gary Tideswell. And I just wanted to give an overview. It's quite timely. It's the week of mental health awareness, the annual week, but I think it's quite interesting this year. It kind of sits in a year where I don't think mental health has been too far away from many people's thoughts. So I'll just reflect on that. So we are, like everywhere else in society, really, we're responding to changes, a change of recognition, the importance of mental health to our overall health and mental health to a functioning society. And there's a couple of publications which we're using at the moment within a group that's been formed called the Wellbeing Advisory Board. We're using these as references just so that we've got a framework upon which we can compare ourselves as an employer, as a place where people work, people interact, people learn. Thriving at Work, the Green publication, that is something which came out a few years ago, a kind of government level review, which made the case, the financial case for investing in better mental health at work. It was a signal really for employers to take voluntary action, to not require there to be requirements to do this, not legal requirements or such as like, but just saying good employers will engage. So the Thriving at Work framework is quite important to us, but perhaps more relevant to us as a university is this Student Minds publication, the University Mental Health Charter. This is from 2019. And this is, again, a framework which is basically saying something to universities, saying something very important, actually. It's saying the staff and the student mental health are one and the same. And you can't really advance the quality of both of those without giving consideration to each. So the traditional models of staff standalone mental health services and student mental health services are now being, for the first time, looked at as being much more coordinated. So there's obviously still going to be differences, but the likelihood is that we will have a joined up approach, and a whole university approach will emerge. And then perhaps we may choose to get the University Mental Health Charter mark. So we may go through an accreditation, but that's not the important point at this stage. As I say, it's just bringing us together. So there are these external drivers, and in the university, just before the pandemic occurred, there were developments to have a University of Oxford wellbeing strategy, which would have had mental health as a prominent component anyway. Now the pandemic has interfered with that process, delayed the first few months of progress as the other emergencies were being dealt with, but it has now emerged because of the pandemic, reinforced that in the wellbeing strategy, mental health is the #1 priority. So I'm just going to show you really a couple of slides. What it's the exercise that I'm involved in is supporting Professor Chris Conlon, who chairs the Wellbeing Programme Board. It's a subgroup from the Personnel Committee, and it's working between now and the end of the summer to create some proposals around what the university might do to form its strategy for wellbeing. And the first thing that we were looking to do was to understand what we currently provide staff. And some of you may encounter this. This is a slide we've been using on a number of presentations, but it gives us a very quick way of summarizing the current provision that's available to staff for mental health. So if I might just pick off some of these, starting in a clockwise direction. Care First is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week telephone counselling support service. Together All is an online subscription service where people can go on and join a supervised community or just talk to people who've got mutual interests. So both of those are kind of online services. Work and Family Space, I think, is pretty obvious by the title. That's particularly focusing needs around family family issues, family services. That's another subscription service. Active Anywhere is an important connection with the university's sports and physical health support. So we've got some preferential membership details at the moment because of the pandemic, but we're looking with all of these existing provisions to test them against their usefulness to us and to maybe review them. That's what part of the strategy is going to address. The purple box at the bottom, that's the kind of business as usual, if you like, HR interests that would have an impact on mental health. So increasingly developing our awareness. There is acknowledgement of things like workload, which are sometimes absent, where you get what might be a kind of fairly inauthentic engagement in well-being that you may have encountered before the pandemic. Now people are really talking seriously about the realities and things like workload, being distributed, working at home, all of those things. And also in the occupational health service, we've had to deal with long COVID, and of course some of the impacts of long COVID will be psychological as well as physical impacts. So again, moving through the HR services, those are pretty self-apparent. And then moving around towards education and support partnership and talking Space Plus. These are external organisations that we would signpost people towards. And also our own Department of Experimental Psychology, Anxieties and Trauma Group. And this is really just probably the tip of the iceberg for internal capabilities and competencies. And most of this is accessed through the intranet. So if you want to find out about any of these things, go into the intranet and have a look. So that's what we've currently got. And the Wellbeing Programme Board are developing some tools to do a proper analysis of these. Cost benefit analysis, effectiveness of analysis, and also to take into account that this is likely to be something where people would probably want to choose from a menu of options rather than just having one provision. So we're looking at all of that at the moment in the Programme Board, and that's what I wanted to perhaps spend the last few minutes speaking about, because this is where the Programme Board has organised itself into 5 work streams. And the first question with an exercise like this is, how well are we doing? And it's not an easy one to answer at the moment, because there are some statistics around that we can use, but there are also a whole range of other indicators that we need to understand better. So the Wellbeing Performance and Reporting work stream of the Wellbeing Programme Board is looking to take the best models, the best research, including research being undertaken by our own academics, and to try and tell us how well we're doing, so that we in the future can easily understand that. And it might be a combination of classic indicators like attendance, sickness absence, although that's not very helpful if presenteeism is an issue. It may even be a role for technology here. And there are things that people have used in other sectors, not so much in the higher education sector. Things like mood indicators and other tech-based things which can allow people to communicate amongst themselves or with each other about the condition. Service review and benchmarking is what I was referring to previously with the spider diagram. But what's important about that is it's a connection between the Wellbeing Programme Board and the Student Mental Health Task Force. That's been sitting a little bit longer than the Wellbeing Programme Board. So the questions are similar. The student community are being asked, and the student service providers are asking, are we doing the right thing? And how shall we move that forward? Now, there's cross-membership now of the Wellbeing Programme Board and the Student Mental Health Task Force, which is handy. And there's a lot of similarities about how we're going. And as I say, the ultimate objective is a lot more joined up whole university approach. Workstream number 3 in our Wellbeing Programme Board project is staff development and capabilities. So this is classic, but you can imagine you need to have training programs. We're going to need to have awareness raising exercises, and we want to know that people have got the skills and the confidence to take the right action. Well, now we also know that this is quite an interesting area where people aren't waiting for the university to have a strategy. I mean, they're taking decisions locally. We've got people becoming mental health first aiders, for example. So that's an example of something which we need to incorporate. We need to understand that in the future there is going to be a lot of institutional level actions, but there's also going to be a great number of independent actions. Your division, or let's say your division, no, we've got people from different divisions here, but we know of divisions who've got a very well structured approach already. We know departments are making decisions about first aiders. And I'm approached quite frequently at the moment for a way of pulling this together and coordinating it. And maybe we should be able to look forward to, for example, a mental health first aiders network where people can plug in and share information. A comms working group, that's pretty apparent what that will be doing, but we need to imagine that consistent messaging is important at a certain level. So we're looking at how we might do that better. At the moment, if you were to put the term mental health into the university's intranet pages, you would get any number of pathways to any number of different sources of information. And whilst that's good to have that rich picture of information, it's also probably better that some of that is coordinated. And then the last one is quite interesting because this is a deliberate attempt to have a working group which looks at research and the role that research will play in informing the university's strategy for staff and students. So this is very important to me because it means that we keep up to speed with our best thinkers in the institution. The people who are doing the research on anything which is relevant will be invited to contribute materials into the Wellbeing Programme Board. Probably beyond the Wellbeing Programme Board, there'll be a longer sitting group that will have a section which is dedicated to this interface between research and researchers and well-being. The danger is we know it's a good thing to engage in mental health, but if we're not doing it appropriately, if we don't know what the impacts are, you can imagine it could be counterproductive. So the research group is really quite interesting, and it's in its infancy at the moment, and the research influence is really being fed from workstream 5 into workstream 1 to get the wellbeing performance and reporting piece to be well informed. But eventually it's possible to imagine any number of research themes influencing how the policies and the processes and the services develop right the way across the board. And although mental health is the kind of very high priority at the moment, well-being is a very wide construct. I'm sure you're aware it does include all of those things: physical health, you know, creativity, all sorts of different dimensions, and ultimately that will be a very rich picture of up-to-date global leading research which will feed into the programme board. So I think that's all I wanted to say really about the structural approach being taken. These weeks, like Mental Health Awareness Week, are always good for bringing people to a point where we share understandings. I hear mental health being discussed now in much more positive ways than it used to be 5 years ago. I've had the opportunity to look at what's going on in different higher education institutions over the last 10 years or so, and it has been the case that there's an explosion of interest. But what's interesting is there's a diversity of different approaches. So there isn't one approach, and there isn't just one set of services or propositions that we'll make here. It's going to be a fairly diverse thing, and I think it's going to be quite exciting. I'd encourage you to have a look out for things that are going on locally. I'd be very happy to be contacted about things if you want to understand how they can be connected to the work that we're doing in the Wellbeing Programme Board, and also if there's anything that you might propose in the way of services, I'd be very happy to receive that.